Hi, it's Gary King from paytruthforward.com. I'm sure you've noticed as you look around that we've kind of gotten ourselves to a place where ethics, integrity, and honesty just seem to have gone by the wayside. You know, it's almost as if the new honesty is dishonesty. It's almost as if dishonesty has become part of the landscape, and it's just okay. It's all right to say, tell them I'm not here when the phone rings. It's okay to say, tell them I'm in a meeting when you're not in a meeting. And, you know, if anybody questions you about that, you just simply say, well, everybody does that, you know. Or you're late to a meeting and you just say, well, I had a flat tire when you really didn't have one. And, you know, you tell what you perceive to be inconsequential lies in front of your children, which there's no such thing as an inconsequential lie. You can't be half pregnant. So, you know, how did we get to this place? Because it wasn't accidental, and it's not accidental that we treat honesty in such a way that people are actually punished for being honest rather than rewarded for being honest. And so it's led us to a place where it's very difficult to trust. It's very difficult to have a healthy relationship with another human being. You know, if you turn the clock back 40 years, 45 years, I remember when I was growing up, mainstream media was the television, you know, not very different than it is now. The difference back then is television ended at around 10 p.m. at night, sometimes 11. It went off the air, and there were only 3 television stations, not 650. And television programming during prime time, during the dinner hour, during the early evening from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. were programs like Ozzie and Harriet, Leave It to Beaver, My Three Sons. And those television programs were all about virtues. They were all about families who lived virtuous lives. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean is they valued integrity, they valued ethics, they valued being honest. They had high value. Parents taught their children to be honest all the time, no matter what the circumstances. And then all of a sudden, and of course back then as well, the only violence that was really on TV back then was Westerns. You know, that was the primary source of violence, was Western movies on television. And then we started to move forward and inch forward where it was okay to use some profanity on television, as long as it was minor profanity. And all of a sudden, programming started to change. You know, once upon a time, you couldn't show a king-size bed in a bedroom of a married couple. It had to be twin beds. And then we kind of graduated from that. And a little at a time, things started to progress along. A little at a time, things started to change. A little at a time, over a very long period of time, which brings us up to date now, where as you channel surf, I don't know, 75% of the programming has to do with violence. It has to do with killing and beatings. And, you know, here's an interesting statistic for you to contemplate. The average 12-year-old in this country, in the United States, the average 12-year-old, by the time they've reached 12 years old, if they're allowed to watch television constantly, they will have witnessed 100,000 acts of violence by the time they're 12, and 10,000 murders via television and the news. Now, what happens to a 12-year-old that continuously watches programming like that? They become desensitized. They're not sensitive to violence anymore. Could that have anything whatsoever to do with bullying in schools? Is there some kind of connection between becoming desensitized from watching violent programming and violent movies to bullying in schools? Now, of course, the other factor with that is low self-worth. And frankly, well, not all schools a lot of public schools are factories for low self-worth. Not because they set out to be factories for low self-worth. It just kind of turns out that way. You know, in the background you'll see what I call the happiness formula. I've come up with this over the last 6 months. Why did I come up with it? Because I truly believe there is a formula for happiness. That if you practice certain things, it's almost a guarantee. And if you see over my left shoulder, you'll notice the formula is F2, HT2, SW equals HF to the power of 10. Now, if you think about where television programming was 40 or 45 years ago, it basically followed that format of the happiness formula. It was all about F, forgiveness, forgive yourself and others, being honest and truthful to yourself and others, and looking in the mirror and loving what you see. And of course, if you do those things in combination, it's not just those things, in combination with those things, you do some other things like, you know, how many sunrises do you watch? How many sunsets do you watch? You know, how much quality time do you spend with your family? Quality time. Not time as an authority figure, or not time figuring out what your children have done wrong, but quality time. How much quality time do you spend with yourself? How much of that do you spend? And maybe your comment is, well, I just don't have any time. Well, then you need to make some, because if you don't spend any quality time with yourself, your friends, and your family, and you don't practice the happiness formula, well, then one thing I can tell you absolutely for sure, I guarantee you unhappiness. If you don't practice any of those things, and you don't take time for yourself, and you don't spend quality time with your friends and family, I guarantee you, you will wind up unhappy and unfulfilled. And if you happen to win the lottery, well, chances are that's not going to work either. Because winning the lottery and having lots of money are only going to make you more of who you already are. So if you're already miserably unhappy, you already don't forgive yourself and other people, you don't like what you see when you look in the mirror, and you're not honest, and you acquire a lot of money, well, you'll just become more of all those things. So think about it. What if you became honest about everything? What if you forgave everybody, yourself and everybody else that's crossed your path, that's wronged you in some way? And what if you looked in the mirror and you actually liked what you saw? Your life would be totally and completely different. And isn't that one of the reasons you're here, to be happy and fulfilled? So write the formula down. It's real simple. Write it down. F2, HT2, SW equals HF to the power of 10. And remember, there's nothing more important than your character. There never was.